Well, do you guys remember when Trump had signed an emergency executive order that happened in December 21st, 2017? Do you remember what that was about? Well, if you don't, or you haven't heard about it, or maybe you just have forgotten about it because of everything that's been going on, we're going to go over that today and see if maybe that is going to give a hint on what Trump's emergency executive order may actually give a hint as to why Gitmo isn't being shut down and what's going to happen with that. So I'm going to go over this executive order. This, again, is going to be a short show, but I am going over the executive order. Again, we are doing these because of having interaction and discussion in like a roundtable type of discussion. So please put the comments exactly what it is you're thinking and your thoughts that are going on behind it. Okay, so the reason I'm doing these is because there are things going on in Gitmo behind the scenes, but not what you think they are. So you need to know clearly factual information, and you decide in connecting the dots on if they mean anything or not. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, so I'm bringing you over to the CVine website. That's c-vine.com, c-vine.com, which is where we have all our Gitmo reports and actual recordings and things that we do along with reporting what is going on in Gitmo, and I will explain that to you in a minute. Over on the right-hand side, please observe where we have Gitmo travel donations and for reporting. There is no paywall to this website at all. Everything is free of charge, but we do request that you give some sort of donations. That's very helpful to us. And also, if you become a member, I will send you over some weekly newsletters to bring you up to date on other things that I don't always bring up in videos, along with the reports that are going on. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the report in just a minute. As a preview, though, I'm going to do a little bit of a reminder that Trump reiterated statements about how he was not going to shut down Guantanamo Bay. He was not going to shut down Gitmo, but he was going to fill it with some really bad dudes, and this is one of the reports. He said it multiple times, but this is one of the statements in a report in 2018 in The Guardian. I was just going to show it to you. Guantanamo Bay, Donald Trump signs executive order to keep Guantanamo Bay open. In his State of Union address, Trump said he directed James Mattis to keep the prison camp open, reversing Obama's policy. Donald Trump has signed an executive order to keep the Guantanamo Bay prison camp open, reversing the policy of Obama. Okay, so fast forward to today, wash, rinse, repeat, continued multiple months of cancellations with potentially KSM et al., which is the 9/11 pre-trials going on there right now in September because of a July prison COVID outbreak in the middle of summer. So I'm going to move on from there. I did a report on that. You can go back on the website to see it, and or a previous video I also did that explains that. But today we are going over the Trump's emergency executive order of 12/21/17. That's going to give you a little bit of a hint as to why Gitmo won't be shut down. And it's not for lack of trying. It's been through, Obama tried to do it during his 8 years of tenure, and Biden has been trying to do it. Trump stopped it from happening, and believe me, they have been trying, and they're doing things to slowly kind of make that happen. But that's going over past reports. So anyway, I digress. On today's Gitmo Roundtable discussion, we will attempt to discern President Trump's statement made on a number of occasions why he refused to shut Gitmo down, and also said it will be filled with really bad dudes. There were some times, this is an aside, that, other like New York Times reporters, Carol, Rosenberg even said, well, what did he mean by that? What bad dudes? Where are they going to come from? What's it about? She brought this up in a report that she had put out a couple of years ago. So nobody really knew what the answer is. So in addition, we will add clarification at the end as to why Gitmo cannot hold, detain, try, or execute American citizens there in Gitmo via the Office of Military Commission regulations and the U.S. Constitution. A lot of you are still under some misconceptions. Quite frankly, you have been lied to. I'm blatantly say it. I actually did an entire report explaining why. But I'm going to do my best to try and straighten things out, because what's going on here are what you need to be watching and paying attention to as your responsibility as a United States citizen. Okay, so the following below is for educational reference for the discussion in the attached video, which is what I'm doing right now. This is executive order blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuse or corruption. Law and Justice issued on December 21st, 2017. I will do the link to this that you can go back and read it yourself. Okay. Now, going up here, I'm going to read through all of it. So here, all news by the authority invested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, 50 USC 1701, Exequy, IEEPA, the National Emergencies Act, 50 USC 1601, at Sequay, NEA, the global. Okay, I'm not going to go through all that. It's not necessary. All right. I, Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America, find that the prevalence and severity of human rights abuse and corruption that have their source in whole or in substantial part outside of the United States, such as those committed or directed by persons listed in the annex to this order, and that's down at the bottom, I will show it to you, have reached such scope and gravity that they threaten the stability of international political and economic systems. Human rights abuse and corruption undermine the values that form an essential foundation of stable, secure, and functioning societies, have devastating impacts on individuals, weaken democratic institutions, degrade the rule of law, perpetuate violent conflicts, facilitate the activities of dangerous persons, and undermine economic markets. The United States seeks to impose tangible and significant consequences on those who commit serious human rights abuse or engage in corruption, as well as to protect the financial system of the United States from abuse by these same persons. I therefore determine that serious human rights abuse and corruption around the world constitute an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and economy of the United States, and I hereby declare a national emergency to deal with that threat. I hereby determine and order. Section 1A, all property and interest in property that are in the United States that hereafter come within the United States or that are hereafter come within the possession or control of any United States person of the following persons are blocked and may not be transferred, paid, exported, withdrawn, or otherwise dealt in. Number one, the person listed in the annex to this order, which is at the bottom. Two, any foreign person determined by the Secretary of Treasury in consultation with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General. A, to be responsible for or complicit in or have directly or indirectly engaged in serious human rights abuse. B, to be current or former government official or a person acting for or on behalf of such an official who is responsible for or complicit in or has directly or indirectly engaged in 1, corruption, including the misappropriation of state assets, the expropriation of private assets for personal gain, corruption related to government contracts, or the extraction of natural resources, or bribery, or 2, the transfer or the facilitation of transfer of the proceeds of corruption. C, To have or have been a leader or official of 1, an entity, including any government entity that has engaged in or whose members have engaged in any of the activities described in subsections 2A and 2B, 1 or 2B2 of this section relating to the leader's or official's tenure, or 2, an entity whose property and interest in property are blocked pursuant to this order as results of activities related to the leader's or official's tenure, or D, to have attempted to engage in any of the activities described in subsections 2A, 2B1, or 2B2 of this section, and 3, any person determined by the Secretary of the Treasury in consultation with the Secretary of State and the Attorney General, A, to have materially assisted, sponsored, or provided financial material or technological support for or goods or services to or in support of 1, any activity described in subsections A, 1A, 2B, 1, or 2B2 of this section that is conducted by a foreign person. 2, any person whose property and interest in property are blocked pursuant to this order, or 3, any entity, included any government entity that is engaged in or whose members have engaged in any of the activities described in subsections, et cetera, where the activity is conducted by foreign persons. B, to be owned or controlled by or to have acted or purported to act for or on behalf of directly or indirectly any person whose property and interest in property are blocked pursuant to this order, or C, to have attempted to engage in any of the activities described in subsections 3, A or B of this section. B, the prohibitions in subsection A of this section apply except to the extent provided by statutes or in regulations, orders, directives, or licenses that may be issued pursuant to this order, and notwithstanding any contract entered into or any license or permit granted before the effective date of this order. Okay, section 2, the unrestricted immigrant and non-immigrant entry into the United States of aliens determined to meet one or more of the following criteria in section 1 of this order would be detrimental to the interest of the United States, and the entry of such persons into the United States as immigrants or non-immigrants is hereby suspended. Such persons shall be treated as persons covered by Section 1 of Proclamation 8693 of July 24, 2011, suspension of entry of aliens subject to United Nations Security Council travel bans in International Emergency Economic Powers Act sanctions. Section 3, I hereby determine that the making of donations of the types of articles specified in Section 203B2 of IEEPA 50 USC 1702B2 by 2 or for the benefit of any person whose property and interest in property are blocked pursuant to this order would seriously impair my ability to deal with the national emergency declared in this order, and I hereby prohibit such donations as provided by Section 1 of this order. Section 4, the prohibitions in Section 1 include: 1, the making of any contribution or provision of funds, goods, or services by, to, or for the benefit of any person whose property and interest in property are blocked pursuant to this order, and B, the receipt of any contribution or provision of funds, goods, or services from any such person. Section 5, any transaction that evades or avoids, has the purpose of evading or avoiding, causes a violation of or attempts to violate any of the prohibitions set forth in this order is prohibited. Any conspiracy formed to violate any of the prohibitions set forth in this order is prohibited. Section 6, for the purposes of this order, A, the term person means an individual or entity. B, the term entity means a partnership, association, trust, joint venture, corporation, group, subgroup, or other organization. And C, the term United States person means any United States citizen, permanent resident alien, entity organized under the laws of the United States or any jurisdiction within the United States, including foreign branches, or any person in the United States. Section 7. For those persons whose property and interest in property are blocked pursuant to this order who might have a constitutional presence in the United States, I find that because of the ability to transfer funds or other assets instantaneously, prior notice to such persons of measures to be taken pursuant to this order would render those measures ineffectual. I thereby determine that these measures to be effective in addressing the national emergency declared in this order, there needs to be no prior noticing of a listing or determination made pursuant to this order. Section 8. The Secretary of the Treasury, in consultation with the Secretary of State, is hereby authorized to take such actions, including adopting rules and regulations, and to empower all powers granted to me by the IEEPA and the Act as may be necessary to implement this order in Section 1263A of the Act with respect to the determinations provided for therein. The Secretary of the Treasury may, consistent with the applicable law, redelegate any of these functions to other officers and agencies of the United States. All agencies shall take all appropriate measures within their authority to implement this order. Section 9. The Secretary of State is hereby authorized to take such actions, including adopting rules and regulations, and to employ all powers granted to me by IEEPA and the INA and the Act as may be necessary to carry out Section 2 of this order, and in consultation with the Secretary of the Treasury, and reporting requirement in Section 1264A of the Act with respect to the reports provided for in Section 1264B2 of that Act. The Secretary of State may be consistent with applicable law, redelegate any of these functions to other officers and agencies of the United States consistent with applicable law. Section 10, the Secretary of Treasury, in consultation with the Secretary of State and Attorney General, is hereby authorized to determine the circumstances no longer warrant the blocking of the property and interest in property of a person listed in the annex to this order, and to take necessary action to give effect to that determination. Section 11, the Secretary of the Treasury, in consultation with the Secretary of State, is hereby authorized to submit recurring and final reports to Congress on the national emergency declared in this order, consistent with Section 401C of the NEA 50 USC 1641C and Section 204C of IEEPA 50 USC 1703C. Section 12, this order is effective at 12:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, December 21st, 2017. Section 13, this order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable at law or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities, its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. Donald J. Trump, the White House, December 20th, 2017. And again, it went live on the 21st. Excuse me. You can see down below in the annex, there are a number of names here that it is being applied to, and they're from different places all around the world. And he talks about having it added to, and so on. Now, I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but for future reference, I'm not going to go over it today because I've gone over it multiple times, but I have included, again, why American citizens cannot go to Gitmo as it stands right now. So these things that you've been told and so on, it can't happen. You read this, you will understand why. American citizens have been tried for treason and various things since this country began. They're not tried in Gitmo. They are tried, if they are American citizens, in federal court. Now, I understand there's all these other caveats and so on. Just read this and know what is going on right now. So I am going to, stop sharing. And actually, I probably shouldn't have. I'm going to go back just a second. Okay, I wanted to go here and show you the Gitmo calendar. The reason I'm showing this to you is for those of you that haven't been keeping up, um, anybody can watch the trials in Gitmo. That's the way it's been since January of 2019. There is a special room in Fort Meade that is open to the public at large. Okay, you just go on base on Fort Meade and keep an eye on these calendars, and you can watch actually what's going on. Now, they started up again full bore in June, and they all went through. We actually reported on those and utilized the report from Carol Rosenberg, who was physically in Gitmo, but in Fort Meade it is transmitted via CCTV live with a 40-second delay, exactly the exact same thing as if you were physically in Gitmo watching these. So we reported on that and used the transcripts as backup. Carol Rosenberg used her reports, which was very good. So you got it from multiple sources, and the transcripts are still available for you to look at. The two trials in June were the Hadi trials and the Nashiri trials. Okay, I explained exactly what those were about. Go back into my previous reports and or YouTube, and it'll explain exactly what happened. And then we go to July. And so the KSM et al. 9/11 trials for part of the month were supposed to go on this month. And not surprisingly, because they are in plea deals and the story behind that is kind of damning. But it's not surprising they are in plea deals right now as we speak behind closed doors, and ultimately trying to just get rid of this. And I'm not going to go into that right now, but the first 3 weeks of that were canceled. And then the final 2 weeks of this month going on right now was the NSF German, which was the Bali bombing, and they canceled that too. So they had been having trials. They had scheduled July, August, September, October, November that are full schedule. We were really excited. Now, this is important. You need to hear this. We were going down in August, along with many of you, to meet us there at Fort Meade, so all of us could watch these trials together. That is the only way. I personally knew that a lot of these things that were going on where Hollywood celebrities and politicians were being held at Gitmo was untrue, because I was seeing it personally along with a number of other volunteers, but everyone else was given the impression there was no way to fact check. So you were pretty vulnerable in basically being told various different stories. And now so many people are misled. But so those last two were canceled. Now, this all happened after we were told that we could use the auditorium in Fort Meade because there was going to be a large number of people showing up to watch these. They were fascinated that these trials were going on. It was going to be an eye opener. It may not be what you thought it was going to be, but it still was the truth, and you could see it for yourself. And so once that got out, because there were going to be hundreds of people showing up along with multiple truthers that a lot of us know were also going to be there as eyes on witnesses. And then all of a sudden, the last 2 weeks in July were canceled. And then we go to August, and they canceled August. There was 3 different types of trials that were going to be going on in August, 3 of them. And so the second week of the Hadi trial was canceled, but it left the first week. Okay, fine. That's little bits and pieces, but it was still going on. Everything else was still happening. And then they canceled the last 2 weeks, which was the Abdul Rahim Hussein is the Nashiri trials. And then they canceled what was going on with the NSF Nurijan trials, which was the Bali bombing. The other was the Cole bombing. And then they canceled the last week of Hadi. Then I find out that there's a possibility, which in September was when the KSM et al. Trials were supposed to go again, that there was a real strong possibility that that was going to go on because of some things they were going to do to find out if one of the 9/11 defendants was mentally in his right mind. um, doing that kind of a plea deal. So that is supposed to go on in September. But what happens? The first 3 weeks of the trials, other than the KSM et al., were canceled also. So it's just very interesting. It isn't just one trial, one judge. I did a video explaining the official reasons behind all of it. And it's kind of like the same old, coincidental, ongoing, last 20 years, all of the various different trials, all of them are in pretrial. Okay. But KSM et al. 9/11 is still on. I am rather doubtful that it's going to go through, but I am keeping an eye on it and I'm bringing it to your attention. Okay. So now I'm going to stop sharing again. All right, folks. I know that was a long read. You probably glazed over if you're even still with me. And if you are, thank you. It means you're holding on and you're paying attention, which is so important. So there is more coming. All the reason I'm bringing this to you is it shows again how this is not just within the United States, folks. There are things working together globally in tandem. There are, and there are too many dots of factual things to connect that to be able to see this. It isn't just one thing. And so the reason this is taking so long, we aren't just dealing with one small thing. We're dealing with an incredible amount of things. So stay strong. Keep your eyes open. Do not despair. Do not allow them to demoralize you or to make you exhausted. That's part of what PSYOPs does. That's all a part of irregular warfare. It's been a part of warfare forever, where you go ahead and demoralize the enemy, so to speak. So hang in there, and I will be bringing more information to you for you to pay attention to. Have a good day, everybody. Oh, and like this video. Talk to you later.